We're going to jump into this presentation, and we're going to talk about some things that sometimes be a little difficult to talk about. That's the fatalities on our roadways. Some of us have been involved in a fatality crash as someone who walked away from it, perhaps. Some of us have lost loved ones in it. It's a problem out here. It gets a lot of media attention. It's receiving a lot of attention at the state level with a lot of resources and funding coming back to this region. The Permian Road Safety Coalition has done some outstanding work in educating the public. There's lots of outreach being done. But as you'll see with this presentation, it starts with you. We can't do this alone. We can't ticket our way out of this problem. We're trying. When I go to safety meetings, I'll speak with companies, and I'll use this one company example, I'm not going to name them. We're talking at the end, and their drivers start complaining about the roads out here. How bad 285 is, how bad County Road 300 is near Mentone, State Highway 302. And I spoke up and I said, you know what, they're making my point for me here. I said, who's driving out there? Who's driving on those roads out there? Is it soccer mom with the 3.2 kids and the latte and the Frenchie? No. It's the oil field driving out there. The same people going to the same locations, to the same pipelines, to the same rigs, to the same sand plants as everybody else. That's who's driving out there. We have to police ourselves as an industry. We have to. We'll jump into this. Hashtag not today, because we say not today because it's been since November 7th, 2000, that we've gone one day without a person killed on the roads in Texas. 22 years. 22 years since we've had one day where no one was killed. All right, so what do you see here? Yellow light, right? What are we supposed to do? Slow down, right? What does everybody do? Go real fast. You can go into any intersection anywhere. 42nd and JBS in Odessa, Midkiff and Wadley, everybody's zooming through it. A little louder. Everybody's zooming through it. So what are the costs of driving on our roads? Analyzing the past 4 years, 2021 showed to be the deadliest on our Texas roads. We don't have the stats for 2022 yet finalized, but we hope to have them by the end of this first quarter. If you take a look at the fatality crashes, if you look back at 2018, we had 3,656. If you look at 2019, we had 3,623. If you look at 2020, we had 3,893. 2021, 4,403. Now, COVID happened, and yet we still increased. Even though businesses were shut down, schools were shut down, gyms, the oil field pretty much shut down for a period of time, and yet our fatality numbers increased statewide. Why is that? I think because we stopped doing some of the safety things we're doing here today. We stopped meeting. Everything went to Zoom. And what happens when it goes to Zoom? You log on, and you shut the computer screen, and you go back to doing whatever else you were doing. That happens. So how does 2022 look? Well, I don't have the final numbers, but we'll jump into it. So this is the preliminary information. This is just the Permian Basin. This is not the rest of the state. These are the counties. The counties are listed right up here. You know the names: Andrews, Crane, Dawson, Borden, Ector, Midland, Reeves, Pecos. This is our home area. Total number of fatality crashes, 112. Average a fatality crash every 3.25 days. Now put that in perspective. If there was a murder in your neighborhood every 3.25 days, would you continue to live there? No, you'd move out. But yet we drive on roads where there's a fatality every 3.25 days. Total deaths was 138, with the average age of the deceased 41 years old. What does that tell us? That tells us these are experienced drivers. Most people at the age of 41 have been driving for what, 20, 25 years? These aren't kids who are dying. These are working age men and women who are dying on our roads here. Deadliest months, December, 18 fatalities, one every 1.72 days, December 2022. June, we had 14 every 2.14 days. In August, had 13 every 2.38 days. That's a lot of deaths. No seatbelts resulted in 53 of those deaths. Now think about that. We've been wearing seatbelts. They've been put in automobiles since the early 70s, right? It's been the seatbelt law since the late 80s. We're going on 30 years, 35 years of seatbelts, and yet we have 53 of those crashes, 53 of those deceased, no seatbelts. Intersection crashes, 30. Speeding, 11. Distracted driving, that's a big one, 28. 28. When you have a vehicle driving down the road and it drives directly into the back of another vehicle in front of it, what does that tell you? Distracted, right? This is a big issue for me because our youth are learning this from who? Us. We are the gatekeepers of our communities. I know with Serena, with Medical Center Hospital, this is a big issue. We have the Knowledge Empowers Youth program. I'd like to give a shout out to Serena here because she's doing excellent work at Medical Center Hospital with the youth. And this is one of the big topics there, distracted driving, once again. And you talk to the kids, when you go in and you speak to them, and you ask them who has a driver's license, in a group, about half to 2/3 do. And you ask them who texts and drives, and do you think anybody raises their hand? No, they laugh and look at each other. But the next question we ask is whose parents text and drive? And guess what? Those hands go up. They will tell on us. They will tell on the parents. So I know that parents text and drive because the kids tell me they do. Wrong side of the road, 22. That's alcohol, aggressive driving, pedestrians, 4, and all other. Equipment failure, fatigue, racing, 17. Okay, we'll break down the types of crashes. Intersections, that's his total number over that 4-year span. 4,133, resulting in 30 fatalities. So what can you do when you're out there driving? What can you do when you come to these intersections? Well, one is don't automatically assume the other vehicle is going to stop. Don't automatically assume the other vehicle is going to stay stopped. Be prepared to drive defensively. We'll pick on 866 and 302 just outside of West Odessa. I know most of y'all are probably familiar where that's at. It's one of our major intersections where we have problems. 302 has the right-of-way, 866 has the stop sign. If you're on 302 and you're coming up to this intersection, you need to cover the brake. You need to turn the cruise control off. You need to be paying attention. Get that phone out of your hand. Be ready to take evasive action. Commercial motor vehicle crashes. Look right over here, we got a belly dump, you got a sandbox in the back, and you've got a car in there. You think anybody walked away from that one, in that car? Not at all. Not at all. Our commercial motor vehicles get a bad rap, and they do cause their share of crashes, but they're not the primary factor a lot of times. A lot of times it's how other motorists drive around those vehicles, the aggressive driving, the cutting in front of them. We've got to give these commercial vehicles room out there. They are our lifeblood. We can't have the oil industry without them. We can't get the sand to the frack jobs. We can't get the oil out of there. We can't get the water. Can't get our groceries here. Commercial motor vehicles are our lifeblood. We have to be considerate of how we drive around them. 1,380 crashes, 52 fatalities. Single vehicle crashes, 1,368, 49 fatalities. Anybody guess why that's fatality numbers are so high? It's one of the most survivable crashes out there. But yet, seatbelts. I think somebody might have said it. Seatbelts. That's your seatbelts right there. Coming up on 20 years doing this job, and I've seen 2 people ejected from a vehicle and live in 20 years. It's not good odds. Not good odds. If you're seat belted in, one of the most survivable crashes. If you're ejected, one of the most deadly crashes. Why is it so survivable? Because the vehicle is not coming to an abrupt stop. It's rolling to a stop. The energy is dissipated over distance instead of coming to an abrupt stop like hitting the back of an 18-wheeler where everything crushes in and your internal organs hit the front of your rib cage and you have internal bleeding. Very survivable if you're inside the vehicle. Very deadly if you're outside the vehicle. Once again, that's that seatbelt. I know I sound like a broken record saying it, but we see it so much. Guys out here in the oil field, out there working on these rural areas, they come out of one lease, they run around on the lease without their seatbelt on, checking wells, pumping, whatever they're doing. They come out, hit the blacktop, and they got to go down 8 miles to the next lease and come in. They go down those 8 miles without a seatbelt on, 75 miles an hour, and then a crash happens. So how can you run around without a seatbelt on? I mean, every vehicle has warnings, right? Things beep at you, lights flash at you. You either disregard it, you bypass it, one of the two. We see a lot of vehicles where drivers bypass it. They put a clip in there or they cut the wires or whatever. Think about that. If you're a fleet safety person, make sure those seatbelts are working. Make sure those seatbelt warnings are working in your vehicles. Work zone crashes, 579, 15 fatalities. The Permian Basin is going to be under construction for the foreseeable future. It's going to stay that way. I-20 is going to be that way for the next 10 years. It's a 3-lane project, go in both directions, all the overpasses replaced. We're going to have to drive in it for the next 10 years. We've got to be courteous. If you look at traffic in a work zone, it looks like fourth graders trying to get in line at the lunch cafeteria. That's what it looks like. Everybody trying to get in front of everybody else. You've got warning signs 4 miles back, left lane closed. And yet everybody's cutting everybody off. I've already passed that truck once. He's not getting in front of me again. Watch how people drive. We've got to drive courteous. We've got to drive courteous. At one time, people used to wave to each other out here. Now they might wave with the middle finger, but at one time, people drove courteous. I've lived my entire life out here. One time, people drove courteous in West Texas. Head-on crashes, 193, 25 fatalities. That's that aggressive driving. Remember, when law enforcement stops you, we are just reacting to what you're doing. It's a decision you made. When you decided to pass 3 vehicles in a no passing zone, that's a decision the driver made. Nobody made that driver make that decision. Nobody made you make that decision. That's a decision you made. That aggressive driving, those head-on collisions, and that intoxicated driving. Nobody made you drink 12 beers and get behind the wheel. That's a decision you made. Distracted driving, here's our big one. One of the most underreported areas right here. 750 crashes, 11 fatalities. Why is it so underreported? Because it's so much more socially acceptable to say anything else than to say you were on the phone to the officer or to your safety man or to the company. They will blame it on anything else than to say I was on the phone. But we're seeing that a lot. We're seeing that phone. That's Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. People are doing it all going down the road. I was teaching to a group of kids, and a young lady raised her hand and said, I tell my mom not to text and drive. I said, that's great. She goes, you know what my mom said? I said, I'm not texting them on Facebook. As if that's okay. As if that's okay. Once again, we are the gatekeepers of our communities. We are the adults. We are the ones who set the example for our youth. We have to set a good example. Is this an accident? Somebody might have said there's no such thing as accidents. That's right. We don't call them accidents anymore. The Department of Public Safety, we call them crashes because they have contributing factors that caused the crash. Speed, alcohol, distracted driving, aggressive driving, failing to stop and yield the right of way. These are all decisions that the driver made. This is what our first responders go to. This is what our first responders see. Our volunteer fire departments, our EMS, our police officers. This is what your emergency rooms see when they come in from the trauma. This is who our helicopters pick up out here. This is the cost of driving on our roads here in the Permian Basin. This is a cost we're trying to stop. Talk about commercial motor vehicles real quick. So we were outside talking about commercial motor vehicles, going through those inspections, what we do roadside. But what we do roadside is a reaction to what that company put out there, right? That company put that truck out there. Now, some of these inspections are random, but most of the time, our troopers are looking for that vehicle with the violations. So if we're looking for that vehicle with the violations, what can the company do? Pre-trip inspections, right? Regular routine maintenance. Getting those trucks off the road, bringing them in. Not putting the dollar before everything. Not putting the dollar before safety. That's what the companies can do. Looking at it right here, this is our enforcement program. Number of inspections. Here in Texas, 250,318 violations. Number of inspections, with no violations, 74,387. With violations, 175,931. That's a lot of inspections. That's a lot of violations out there. Look at that out of service. Number of violations, number of out of service. The Fed rate, the state of Texas. If you look at our stats compared to the rest of the state, we have a lot. We have a lot. Of course, we have a lot of industry out here, right? We have the oil industry, we have the forest industry on the other side of the state, we have the shipping industry at the ports. Trucks are our lifeblood in the state of Texas. And our commercial motor vehicle enforcement division and our partners with the police departments that have MCSAP programs, they do a lot of great work. But once again, we cannot ticket our way out of this problem. It starts with accountability with industry. It starts with accountability with industry. When we're out there on the side of the road doing a level 2 inspection, we know when the driver did a pre-trip or not. When the driver can't find his triangles and he has to walk around the truck, do you think he did a pre-trip? No. When he doesn't know where his registration is, do you think he did a pre-trip? When he doesn't know what a low air warning is, do you think he ever does a pre-trip? Has he ever been trained how to do a pre-trip? Does he even know what a low air warning device is? Does he know to pump the brakes down to see if it works? That's what we see out there. That's what we see out there. Most common violations in Texas. These are the top 20. We talked about the top 5 outside. Inoperable required lamp. State vehicle registration license plate violation. Operating a CMV without proof of periodic inspection. Windshield wipers. And of course, brakes. Top 5 violations right there. If you go down the list a little bit more, you'll see turn signal and excessive weight. Fire extinguisher. Tires. Oil leak. All routine maintenance. Nothing out of the ordinary, right? There's no, as they might say, feather-legged violations, are there? No, these are everyday safety violations. Windshield wipers. You'll see commercial vehicles with no windshield wipers working. What do you do when it rains? What do you do in the springtime when you've got mosquitoes and bugs and you've got a windshield that, I don't know how they can see out of it? Brakes. How do you stop the vehicle? Who's checking the brakes? Are your mechanics doing it? Are you holding them accountable? These are questions to ask your safety departments. These are questions to ask your DOT coordinators. We've got to think about this. Remember, every violation you get puts points on your safety profile. That profile goes from 0 to 100. The higher that number, the more your insurance costs you. The higher that number, the more likely you are to be audited. And those audit fines are big. If you think that 3-digit number ticket we wrote you for $300 on the side of the road is expensive, wait till you get a $20,000 fine from the state, or even higher from the feds. It adds up quickly. I talked about it starts with us, and it truly does. Like I said, we cannot ticket our way out of this problem. We're trying. You can go to any justice of the peace court anywhere in the state and ask them if they get plenty of tickets from DPS or the sheriff's office. They'll tell you they do. We write them. But we have to have industry, we have to have the public's help in fixing the fatality problem and the crash problem in the state. Like I said outside, enforcement and industry, enforcement and the public, we're on both sides of the fence going in the same direction. We're on one side. One's on one side of the fence, enforcement's here, industry's over here. We're not against each other. We're working to the same goal, the goal of reducing crashes on our roads. So what's an appropriate number of fatality crashes? 20? Somebody said 0. 0 is the number we want. I've had people say, well, if we could get that number in half, that'd be great. Well, that's true, it would be great. But that's 112. If we cut that number in half of this room wouldn't be here. To put it in perspective, there's about 120 of us here that were registered, somewhere in that number probably. So you take that, half of the room wouldn't be here. Still not acceptable. We got to get that number down. So we look up here. I will not speed today. I will not drive tired today. I will not drive distracted today. I will not put my life or the other lives in danger today. It goes back to what we said. Remember, nobody made you put that cruise at 90. Nobody made you pass other vehicles in a no passing zone or pass on the shoulder of the road or run through the stop sign. That's a decision that a driver makes. That's the decision your drivers are making out there. That's why safety is so vital, so important. At the end of the day, we all want to go home. Whether you work for ProPetro, DPS, ConocoPhillips, we all have husbands, wives, parents, kids. We all want to go home at the end of the day. Any questions out there? Thank you all very much for your attention. I appreciate it. I know it's a tough topic to talk about, but it is a topic that we have to talk about. Only one way to fix it. That's with us. That's within the community. Thank you all very much for your attention. I appreciate it.